episode just to see how it goes. And then we finished. He was like, "Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll put that out." And I was like, "Oh." And then from that point forward, I just kept getting more and more comfortable with it because you can edit. And like that's the number one thing I say to people who are nervous about starting a podcast is like sit down, record something. If it's bad, edit it, and if it's really bad, delete it, and no one ever needs to hear it. But doing a live show with people like sitting in the audience that's looking different. At you, I will walk on stage and think, man, I hope I say anything funny. I hope anything funny comes out of my face. And so I get a little nervous doing that. But yeah, doing interviews and stuff like this isn't as nerve-wracking as like sitting down and hoping, especially when we do Adventure Zone. Because at least with my brother and me, we can like go over the questions a little bit ahead. We don't like script anything. We just like read the questions out loud and say like, yeah, okay, that's good. That's a good one. That'll work. But for Adventure Zone, it's just like, I don't know what's going to happen. I hope it's fine.
Who else gets nervous doing anything?
Well, yeah, I think
Bobby?
that's just part of it. I think that's just part of it. I mean, certain days, certain episodes, you just don't feel like doing it, you know, and it's hard to get psyched up. You kind of have to get yourself mentally prepped. You know, I go around smiling for a half an hour before I do a show just to get me in a more positive mood sometimes because I'm not always feeling it, you know?
Yeah, that is better. I mean, way more than nervous is there's lots of times that we sit down to record and it's just like, I don't know that I am feeling it.
Right.
But it also is like, because this is a business, you know, and we have to put out an episode.
You got to do it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I remember when we were doing the My Brother and Me TV show, like we were filming, 12-hour, 14-hour days. And then we had to record My Brother and Me, the podcast, and we were just sick of looking at each other. But like we had to do it because like we didn't want to stop. We didn't want to burn this thing just because we were working on this thing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I can tell you, on my end, nerves really come in when I'm about to release something new. Not if you're doing the show you've done for a while, no big deal, right? But we've been going through a lot of growth recently and creating new shows like Foreplay, creating new shows. I have one coming out on October 1st called Things That Are Blank, and it's like, okay, I'm about to put this out there, and I hope somebody likes it because otherwise I'm going to feel like shit. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the nerves come in for me.
Yeah. I start to get nervous when we get close to our threshold of content. So like as it gets closer to release day and I don't have something prepared, then I start to get nervous because consistency really feels like the key piece to any sort of internet material you're putting out, and especially a podcast.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something we realized very early on is like making it, allowing people to schedule it. Of like when you put out an episode, right? They every Tuesday or whatever, that's what they listen to on their way home from work. Yeah. And if it's not there, enough times, pretty soon they'll find something else to listen to on their way to work.
They build you into their lives, into their schedules.
Yeah, on that point, even when you're starting off and you think you only got 20 downloads, I've been there and like nobody's listening. I don't feel like recording this week, and you get an email like, "Hey,
where's your
first
episode?
email ever? Right? Where's your episode?" Like. Somebody listens.
My friend, my friend
not
Brent.
my mom.
Yeah, my friend Brent, who I do trends like these with, he has phrased it a really good way, which is like when you are a creator of whatever, right? It's like being the mayor of a town. And no matter what the size of your town is, right? For the people who live in that town, you're the mayor.
Right.
You can go to some other town and no one knows who the heck you are. Yeah. And you're like, I'm the mayor of this other town. And they're like, cool, I don't live in that town. I don't care. But in your town, right, you're the mayor. And so like you need to be there and do your job and be consistent. And like you said, you might only have 20 people, but those 20 people depend on you because you're the mayor.
Right.
Yeah, to the point about nerves, I've always heard if you're not scared, you don't care.
Yeah.
And so to hear the professionals like, I'm still getting nervous means you care.
Yeah.
And there's a commitment to that. So if you aren't scared, I think there's or nervous for that matter, I think there's a problem.
One of the things that really helps with that for me is like I the first time we did a live show, we'd only been doing, I think we were on like episode 35 or something, and now we're on episode 475. So we've come a long way just in hours. But my then girlfriend, now wife, said to me, like, just make your brothers laugh and like don't worry about the audience, just focus on your brothers, and like that kind of thing. That helped so much because it gave me a better focus than be funny, which is impossible to do. That is like you can't do that. You can't be funny, but you can entertain somebody, you can crack up somebody, you can make somebody laugh, and like having an outwardly focused goal makes me not as nervous anymore, and that it helps doing my brother the regular show too.
That's the advice I give out to people who have interviews. If it's not interesting to you, it's not interesting to your audience. You've got to control your
and that's
interviewing.
the key is that if you're going to continue long term as a podcaster, it needs to be a passion that you have, and you need to be able to get up in the morning and look forward to it, and build on that audience, right? That first 20 people, like you said, if you're not there for them and you're not, really being you and delivering that audience, you're not going to get another 20. So that's really the key, I think.
I also think why to that point, I think it's why it's so important to pick a subject matter that my like starting advice whenever somebody says like I'm thinking about doing it, I always say like pick a subject you are already interested in and like a co-host you already talked to about it. Right. So that way, like even if no one's listening, you're still enjoying the conversation.
It's all about chemistry with your co-host.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a co-host, you got to have a chemistry where you can almost finish the other person's
Sentences.
Well, I mean, and like I said, at this point, we've done 475 episodes of My Brother and Me, right? Like podcasting is a long game. And like when you start, like you may only have 20 listeners, 30 listeners, right? And there are people who won't even start listening to a podcast until it has like 40 or 50 episodes so they can binge it, right? Nobody's interested in episode 3 of a thing, right? Once you get to 20, that's when they start like telling their friends about it and saying like, you got to check out this show. Right. And so like you can't start it thinking like I'm doing this for money. I once listened to, it was during the reboot, not really a reboot, but the relaunch of Twin Peaks, the like new Twin Peaks. And I was listening to Twin Peaks podcasts because I'm a nerd. And one of the ones I started, the host, like one of the first things he said is like, yeah, I've never really been interested in Twin Peaks, but like you guys wanted me to talk about it, so like, and I just turned it off. I was like, why would I listen to this? That's a terrible way to start your podcast.
Yeah, it's funny you guys brought that up. We started Trivial Warfare with just 2 people, me and my best friend, and what we said is, if nobody listens, I'd say that's what I thought. Yeah. We said if nobody listens, it's okay because we've created an excuse to hang out with each other.
Right.
We're doing it as best friends, and it's going to be a great time whether anybody pays attention or not.
I mean, and that was one of the beauties of doing the Adventure Zone was the fact that I got to hang out with my kids once a week. And I mean, because we never talk.
No.
They never call. I mean, but that was seriously, that was a huge benefit. And
we all 4 live in different places, right? Yeah. I mean, even Dad and Justin live close to each other, but it's still like a 45-minute drive, right? And so, and Griffin lives in Texas, and I live in Cincinnati, and so it gives us, like, we talk to each other every week, multiple times a week, and at this point, that's why we started My Brother and Me, because Griffin and I were moving away from Huntington, and Justin was like, we should do a podcast so we can keep talking. Wow. And so, like, that's why we started doing the show, and then, like, Griffin moved to Texas, and so the 3 of us, it has brought us closer, and now, like, we get to, when we do live shows, our whole families travel with us, and so, like, now, like, our kids who live in 3 different states get to hang out once or twice a month, right? Like, like Justin's daughter and my daughter are best friends, right? And we live, like, 4 hours away from each other. But it's like we get to hang out and do stuff all the time together. Because
and I understand this whole doing a show with your best friend. I do my show with my best friend myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm solo. I have no friends. I have 0 charisma on my trading card. But I've been doing this about 14 years, and the time I got nervous was I've been doing a podcast, and it was actually a live podcast. We were using Shoutcast internet radio, if anybody remembers that.
That's terrifying.
Ooh,
live podcast is terrifying.
So I did that for about 13 years. Finally, in December of this past year, we moved to Twitch. I have a face for radio. And so you want to talk about nervous. It's when I'm like, okay, now I'm going to have a camera on me, and I do it by myself. So not only now am I talking and reading by myself, I'm also switching scenes. I'm also like queuing up B-roll, and the nervousness happens when something doesn't go right, and like everybody's looking at me. And they couldn't look at me before, and now they look at me. And then it's when I, have the half of the show where I allow my listeners to call in, which is always a scary proposition.
Oh, yes.
And then when nobody actually wants to call in, so I got to vamp for 10 minutes.
Right.
And so that's when I get nervous. But I'm there with my best friend, me.
I'm a little jealous of the brother concept. I'm an only child. Yeah, I know. Thank you.
I same.
Yeah, I am too.
That's why I do my podcast by myself.
I feel like I need to give my mom a call, see if she can help me out.
Say, I need
Like,
some co-hosts.
hey, brother.
Could you adopt some funny people, please?
That could be an amazing podcast, though. Advice from my mother.
Yeah.
Where you tell her your
man.
problems and she gives you advice. That would be comedy gold.
I would listen the hell out of it.
Well, to both your issues, or points rather, you're talking about connecting with family and talking, and you're talking about getting advice. I'm 42 this year. Hadn't had a relationship. I grew up with my dad in the house, but there was damage from his past. That everything we talked about, hey, have you seen Avengers? And that's as deep as our conversation went. The proudest moment, well, I think he's been proud of me different times, but the proudest moment we had is I went to New Media Expo, and I did what you did, Andrew. I said, hey, there's Leo Laporte. I'm doing a live show from the expo floor right now at the table. I went, Leo, will you come sit down? And he did. Somebody took a picture, and they got it framed for me and all that. And my dad saw that. He's like, you got to sit with Leo Laporte? I'm like, no, he sat with me. That was my show.
Right.
But I reached out to him recently and started just recording. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm just recording it. I said, hey, I don't know you. You don't know me really. But my brand is I get what I want. I go after what I want. I want to know you. And we've just started doing hour-long conversations each week.
It's great.
And I've gotten some advice from him, and it's going to be interesting. And I'm really doing it for me, so maybe I'll put it out one day. But it's been phenomenal. But now, does anybody have any? I've got more questions. Does anybody have any questions for the panel? Anything specific they'd like to know? I want to throw this at somebody.
Chest pass. Chest pass.
I have a question. What's up with these tables?
What do you know what's up with these tables?
They're
for
cool.
some reason, it feels like we're waiting at a cafe. And it's just like we sat down.
We're
we
at
haven't got our
Starbucks.
meals
We're at
yet.
no one's
Starbucks.
brought
We're
any
talking
coffee.
about
I
Starbucks.
want my coffee.
I will also say why you all think of questions. You should. Questions are great. Is the other thing that is really cool about doing it, whether it's with best friends or families or yourself. I mean, really, like you can be your own best friend. I love myself.
I am my own best
Bobby loves doing it.
I
with
love
himself.
myself very much.
Split personality.
Is being able to like. So, for example, because we do the Adventure Zone together, and my brother and me, we've gotten to do like really cool things. That like we got to perform on the stage of the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee, which is like this famous, storied performance space. And it was cool because we got to do it, but it was like doubly cool because we got to do it with family. And so like me and my brothers and our dad like singing on the stage of the Ryman Auditorium. Like we worked the song into our Dumb Dumb podcast so we could sing on the stage. And it's like a cool thing that we got to do that is like something, and like writing the graphic novel together is something that we've gotten to do together. And like, I don't know, stuff like that is like, I have, one of the reasons I have so many different podcasts is like, I will make a new friend and say, this friend is very cool. I want to get to know them better. Let's do a podcast.
Yeah, and the opportunities also come even if because I'm up here as the ultimate hobbyist. I'm not here to make money. I'm here to make experiences. My first Dragon Con was 1995. So, and I haven't been to every Dragon Con since, so don't use that as a number. But if you told me in 1995 that one day my name would be in the program and I would be, and my next panel, 11:30, I'm moderating a voiceover panel for the video game track in Hyatt Centennial. And I grew up going to panels in the Hyatt Centennial Ballroom to see other celebrities and to think that this is enabling me to go up, and it's I know it's not the Ryman, but it's Hyatt Centennial, which is, something I never thought I would be able to do. I would call myself crazy in 1995, and just doing this hobbyist podcast, that's enabled that for me, and I'm sitting up here talking to you guys.
Yeah, and everybody has their own Ryman, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a Dragon Con attendee, and so to be the same thing with you, like, whoa, that's my Ryman experience, and then you set the next goal, you know.
Yeah.
And on the other end of that, for us, like my group, we were all in an improv troupe in college. We lost contact for almost 10 years. And we came back together to do the show to help out one of our cast members who was in a hard time. And it's been amazing for the last 4 years to just reconnect with these people 10 years on and have that thing to draw us together every single week.
And I feel bad. I wasn't making fun of the tables.
No,
I know there's a specific.
Tony.
I was throwing you a little softball. I know it's a little different than most panels.
It is.
I was curious to hear about it.
It's this is where the conversations happen, right? People go, I get nervous when you give me a microphone. I've talked to somebody, had a great conversation for a half hour, going, okay, we're going to do this podcast now. And I go to hit record, and it's like, yes. I don't know. It's a comfort zone. We all sit at tables, and you're waiting on your coffee. You probably have some of the best conversations. I can't bring my van in here because all weekend when I've rode with somebody, we talked about stuff like, we should record this. This is something, Cots, you're with me.
This is the show.
Yeah, these conversations should be put out somewhere.
Please don't bring your van.
When we did PodCon 2 years ago in Seattle, and like all of the podcasters, all the performers were like sitting around in the green room between events, and like every 3 minutes someone would jokingly yell out, "This is the show, guys! This is it!"
But that's the thing. That's where, conversations. And I love that you brought up, talk to somebody you love, talk about what you love, get here on time, those kind of things have been awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Phil Keating, Chris Wisdom, and Emily Swan.
I also will say, if we're just kind of dispensing general advice until someone has a question, is like one of the my favorite thing, I've been doing this for a decade, and coming to stuff like this, doing performances, doing whatever, is like the community of podcasting has continued to like build and build. And that's one of my favorite things now is like people who I was a fan of their work, like finding out that they have listened to my stuff, or like that, that I get to work with it. That's one of my favorite things that came out of this very, very early on, was like going to Max FunCon and getting to become friends with John Hodgman, who like, I remember listening to his books on tape when we go on vacation, and then getting to meet him, and then him. One time, he introduced me to someone at a party and said, "This is Travis. He's more famous than I am." And I was like, "I don't think that's true, John Foster. Thank you very much."
Yeah, it's a good point about community, especially in podcasting. So if you guys are interested in podcasting and community, you should be attending things like Podcast Movement. Yeah. You should be attending things like Podfest in Orlando in the spring. Those are events for you with people just like you who have the same needs, same problems, and we're talking about this kind of stuff nonstop, whether it's in the panels or even better yet in the bars afterwards, right?
Yeah, and raise your hand if you are doing a podcast today. I'd like to get some idea
Twitch stream,
who's
Twitch
doing
stream, any of that digital creation,
digital media, YouTube,
right?
Nice.
Awesome.
And all this advice goes to that. I mean, yes, digital streaming, you're doing Twitch is going to be a little different, right, Bobby?
Yes.
You gotta be a little more on, as opposed to editing something out that wasn't said correctly. You got to be a little different, but it all applies.
I get the best of both worlds. I edit the video down to the audio podcast.
Yeah.
So I can still edit myself, but the live stuff's still there, and people still call me out on it.
Hey, but it's also, it can be a little dangerous to edit too, so you need to be careful of that. I mean, I think a lot of people need to be more natural with their doing, but also your abilities to work a microphone and to be compelling and stuff. And if you need to edit, that's great, but just be careful, because you can over-edit and make yourself sound like a robot.
Only edit out half the uhs and ers.
Yes.
Only edit out half the like dead air, right? Because like if you, it'll take you forever if you try to cut out every and and leave those in. That's how people talk, especially if you're having a conversational podcast. It's one thing if you're doing like a narrative storytelling thing and you're like reading a script and you like mess up. That's one thing. But if you're just like having a conversation with someone, make sure it still feels conversational when you're done editing, right? You don't want it to.
And the tip I'll say is also leave in the breath. Because if you listen, you'll actually hear you go, and the next thing, so don't edit out the breath up, because that makes it unnatural for the listener.
We all breathe. I mean, that's fair, right?
Well,
are you a robot?
Yes.
And I also, man, this is, I've heard other podcasters say, like, lament some vocal tick that they have or some bad habit they have.
I hate my voice.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I hate your voice too, Charles.
All podcasters hate their voice, don't they?
Well, that's the thing. Yes, everyone hates their voice,
Chest.
especially hearing it recorded, because it never sounds like it does in your head.
Right,
but I've also heard people say, like, well, I mean, our show gets a little rambly sometimes. I was like, okay, cool. that's your show.
Right.
Like that is not
If
one
you
of my
want to change it, you got to change it.
One of my favorite bad movie podcasts is the Flophouse. And one of the like hallmarks of their show is they will go off on a tangent that will like 20 minutes later have nothing to do with the movie they're talking about. And like I remember someone saying like, I like the show, but I wish they wouldn't go on tangents. It was like, hey, that is the show. What are you talking about? That is the show.
Well, and half your audience is going to love the tangents.
Right.
And I think that's a good
that's the
point.
real problem, right?
You really need to know what the point of your show is when you're doing a show. So if your show is a bad movie podcast and you like to ramble and that's what's funny about it, then know that and engage in it and do it. But if your show's a trivia podcast, don't spend 30 minutes rambling because that's not what people are coming for.
Just be consistent with what you're doing.
You
I
have
think
to
is the
know
key.
what you're there to do and make sure you're doing it.
And it will find its audience. You will. One of the big things I think is finding that concept that you are interested in. The other side is it has to be your interest first.
Yep.
Your interest first. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know if anybody will be interested. Trust me.
Oh, yeah.
It will find an audience, and and as long as you are passionate about it yourself, and you find an audience that is passionate about it, the numbers, whatever they're going to be, will be there.
I think we have a question.
Well, it's a question, it's observation as well. Clinton from Comedy Forecast.
There you go.
Podcasting since 2005.
Nice.
One of the original sponsors of Podcast Movement. The only solo podcast that sponsored Podcast Movement.
Those are all observations.
He's taking his shot.
Free
Charles.
advertising. We respect this.
What about self-promo
Plug,
do you
plug.
not understand?
plug.
So we were talking about the type of show you like to do, and I just had an observation about that my original show, because I did college radio, probably like half the people that started originally podcasting, was I really enjoyed doing the short skits, and so I made a show about that. That's my original show. But then my friends Chuck and Craig said, let's do a show together. So that's heavily scripted, as Scotty knows that I had him do a voice for it. So that's done one take, an hour-long show, no script, just I do up some show notes and that's it. And then I do another show now that I do once a year, which is just playing video games, where I just ramble about stuff that I don't understand about video games. And it's just me. So every single show is a different format. And I said to the people that listen to the show, I put out a question. I said, should I like concentrate on one thing, or would you much rather keep things random? Everyone said random. Just make it random. That they like the fact that it's not always the same thing going on. And I think that's keeps it fun for me as well. It's like I don't feel like I'm stuck. It's got to be this one type of thing. So, I know we talk about the fact that it's what you love, but don't feel like you also get painted yourself into a corner, right?
Yeah. I don't think you always necessarily have to know what your show is from the first time you sit down.
Yep.
Sometimes you figure it out a little bit.
Right.
As the first couple episodes, it clicks in, you're like, that's what this is. We found it.
Yeah,
Sometimes
it never
even more
stays
than
the same.
that.
Yeah.
It never stays the same.
We hit
for
our stride
balls.
in the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, I did a podcast called Bunker Buddies with my friend Andy, and I think like 50 episodes in, we changed the format of the show because they were like, we're running out of stuff to talk about, and it became much more of like a informational, like we reviewed products and we talked about news, where it had been like we talked about a specific topic for 45 minutes. We then changed it to like now we have segments that we do, and it revitalized, like re-energized us doing the show, and it was just time for a change,
And you're going to lose audience when you make a shift like that, but then you're going to gain new ones that enjoy the new format. So
All right.
it's never a
So
problem.
we've got about 10 minutes. And the one thing that brought me here today is that I hadn't really had Dragon Con on my radar for anything in digital media. When I heard about Dragon Con, it was just go hotel to hotel, find booze and parties, and you're done. I'm like, and you dress up. I'm like, okay, that's not me.
That's not
I'm
wrong.
good. Yeah. No, it's not entirely wrong, but there's so much
part
more.
of it.
There's so much more. And this guy, Alex Autry, came up to me one day, and we started working together on some other projects. But he says, the dream, man. The dream is to do a panel at Dragon Con. I'm like, what do you mean panel at Dragon Con? I was like, oh, they got a podcasting track. That's the dream. And so I went, sounds good to me. And now I'm actually the director of the track, and we're going digital media and all this. And what my point is that sometimes you accept the negative from your audience for somebody. Oh, you can't do that, and then you'll never podcast again or create that one gaming stream that was bad that day that you didn't like and somebody crapped on it, now you never stream again. So we want to give some positive visions like DragonCon was a dream for me. We'll start with Bobby and we'll come down. If we got time, we've got another question out here. Bobby, what's something you want to tell people to inspire them? Like a goal or something you should do what?
Take your shot. You should, when an opportunity comes, try it. Even if you don't think you're going to be able to succeed at it, still try it, because you'll never know if you're not going to succeed unless you actually try. Charles himself was like, Bobby, you should be pro. You should apply for pro here. And I'm like, no, they're not going to take me. They're not going to take me. I applied it and they gave me pro, and then they continue doing it. So I don't know what's wrong with them, but I hope they keep doing it wrong. So, but if I never took that opportunity, which I almost didn't, and Charles was like, I'm going to beat you up if you don't.
I did say that.
He'll do that, yeah.
And he was like, I'm not going to throw the catch box like this if you don't do it. I'm going to throw it like this. But take the opportunity, and it's okay to fail.
Jonathan.
So I'm big into self-improvement, self-awareness, that kind of stuff. I just want you to encourage you to kind of look inwards at yourself and see what you think might be holding you back from what you want to achieve. So for me, I was a kind of a jerk a lot of times, right? My personality 10 years ago was not that pleasant, and I was turning people off, and Travis knows. Oh my God. Yeah, those days. No, but so seriously, and you know what? I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Great book, by the way. I've read a bunch of other things and really changed my personality. And all of a sudden, what I found is, hey, I'm attracting people now. I'm bringing in new friends, and my new friends are really interested in helping me out. And all of the things that we have now are because I was able to make a change in the way I was operating with people. So I would encourage each of you to look into yourself and think about what you're doing that might actually be holding you back, because it is possible to change it.
I'm going to say two things. Ooh.
Dang it.
Just
I
two things.
guess
Just
Clint
two
didn't get
things.
one then.
No, just two. So
surprising.
for me, when I was in college, I was a theater major, and one of our classes was called Preparations for Professional Work, which was like a big old mouthful. They changed the name of it like every year, and they never landed on a good one. But a part of the class was doing like mock auditions for things, and one of the mock auditions was a voiceover audition, and I didn't prepare anything for it. And when it came time for the audition, I just said I don't have anything, and the teacher was like, okay, and then just moved on. And afterwards, he was like, why didn't you prepare anything? And I was like, I have a terrible voice. I am a very physical, comedic actor. I'm never going to get hired for my voice. It's terrible. And now, it is my living. And it's that kind of thing of that kind of mentality of well, but not me.
So you were the negative message keeping you back.
I was telling myself that that not me, right? For this reason and this reason and this reason. And the fact of the matter is you it's so easy for you to be your own harshest critic, because you know everything wrong, right? You know yourself inside and out. And the fact of the matter is nobody will ever judge you as harshly as you judge yourself. So you need to get over that and just start doing the thing, and then just start doing it, right? Because the secret is everyone is nervous and everyone is afraid and everyone judges themselves harshly. So that leads me to my second point, which is just act like you're supposed to be there. That's right. That's one of the things that I have found.
Play the part.
Right.
Right?
Is
like old Andrew did here
Totally.
today.
right.
Play the part.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yes. Right now, I know nothing about Anthony. But he walked up and sat down at the table. So for all I know, right, he has a million listeners.
Yeah, he's a
right?
superstar.
Honestly,
Right.
I don't know, right? And so if he came up to me at a party and just started talking to me about his podcast, right, and saying, "Oh, I'm a podcaster too." Okay, cool. Now we can talk about it, right? And so that kind of thing of it's so easy to compare what you do to somebody else and think I'm not supposed to be here. I'm just gonna make sure I don't get in anybody's way. I don't want to get found out and kicked out of the room. Don't do that, man. Be there, right? You're supposed to be there. Whether you have 10 listeners or 10 million, nobody knows and nobody cares, right? You're doing the thing. You're doing the same work I'm doing, right? Like, act like you're supposed to be there.
Yeah, I started doing online radio and broadcast radio 20 years ago. So when I got started in this, I didn't really have any background in radio or voice communication. Actually, I didn't even like to talk very much. So back in those days, so I just walked into a radio station because I had a business. I was doing search engine marketing, and I wanted to educate people on how to better get their websites found back in 1999. That was during the .com expansion. And
it never stopped expanding.
And it never stopped expanding. And so I was talking about the web and the internet, and it was just a passion of mine. I was learning, I was educating myself about this new medium and this new opportunity. I was a marketing guy and started going into a radio show. And I didn't do very well on the radio. So live radio for me back in those days was very difficult. So it was something that you just kind of did consistently, and I took it home and built a studio in my bedroom and started doing my shows called the Web Talk World Radio Show, and built it to over 1 million listeners over a 6-year period of time, and was on the XM side of that radio network, and then started podcasting in 2004. And my life completely changed. I was working professionally for platforms, and it's just that the opportunity for you is immense. The opportunity around podcasting is just getting started, and so I would just find what your passions are, focus on those. Even if you have multiple passions, there is a way to combine them to create something that is in a podcast that can reach an audience. And just be fearless. Just go in and do it. I mean, that whole Nike slogan is so true. Just get started, and you'll learn and improve and get better over time. Just like, with me over 20 years. It's been such a fun journey.
Nike's attorneys are calling, by the way.
Oh, no.
Clint.
I worked in broadcast radio for 44 years. I started when I was 2. And one of the early lessons that I learned from one of my favorite professors was, I started in the news department, and I was the weekend news guy, which meant I was the junior man on the team. And so one of my professors said, I listened to your newscast and you can do better. And I said, well, help me. He said, visualize somebody that you are telling these stories to. And so I said, okay. He said, then you're having a conversation. It's a one-way conversation, but it's still conversation. You make a connection. So what I would urge you to do is don't be afraid to make a connection. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because the coolest thing I ever have, in addition to getting to spend all this time with my family, is the fact that so many people will say that something that we did on one of the shows got them through a tough time, made them laugh on a dark day.
Inspired them to create something.
And that is a precious gift that you are given to share. If you can take somebody's burden off, if you can tell something from your life, or heck, I was playing a dwarf cleric that lived on a beach, but you can still get that real connection. You can still get that real contact through that. Don't be afraid to put it out there. The rewards are tremendous if you help one person, or if you inspire one person, or just make somebody laugh for 30 seconds. That you have done a great thing.
Right.
That's great.
That's true.
Yeah, mine. I mean, if you got 2, can I? I'm gonna take 3. You got 3 minutes. Mine's a quick progression. It's do the work. Honestly, don't ever let the opportunities do pop up, and don't miss the opportunity because you didn't do the work. That's the worst feeling in the world. Mm-hmm. So do it. Do the work. Whatever it is. Get it out there. Do the work. Celebrate the small victories. So if you had 10 listeners, now you got 20. You need to personally celebrate that.
That's 100% increase.
Yeah. You wanted to do a panel at Dragon Con. You got that. Take the time. You performed it. The rhyme. Seriously, take a moment to enjoy that. But then on the flip side, be humble. You're not there. I did a panel at Dragon Con. I'm not, the end all be all. So, enjoy a little victory, but be humble and then look for the next goal.
Alfred.
Mine would be to say that you can only do the best show that you can do. So when you create a thing, no matter who's listening to it, if nobody is listening to it, if you've done the best show that you can do, you've created something that's special, and you get to enjoy that, even if no one else is going to, and that's okay.
Man, that was the thing early on. Like, we put it up and we get like iTunes reviews. Like, I don't get why people like these McElroys. I hate this. And I look at that, and at first I feel so bad, and then I'd be like, oh, you know what? Listen to something else then. That's cool. Like, all right, cool. You didn't
There's
need
only
to
a
say
million
that.
podcasts out there you can
You
listen
didn't need
to.
to insult me on the way out the door. Just get the
Okay.
hell out of here.
Cool. You turd.
Chances are
Right?
there's a good chance that guy that made that comment is still listening to your
Right?
show, though, right?
That's fine. One time when we put up the My Brother Me TV show, somebody tweeted at me, I created this Twitter to tell you I don't like your glasses. And I was
You're
just
welcome,
like,
Twitter.
I know. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And it was their only tweet. And I was like,
So we're at the end of time, and all this is great. And what I'm hearing there that I want to sum up is there's 3 levels of comments. There's the we love your show, or 4 levels. We love your show, fandom. Okay, that's awesome. Then down below that is it's not really ranked, but below that is going to be, hey, this is what your show did for me.
Yeah.
This is why I listen. That means a lot to us as creators. That's the thank you. That's the okay, great, you love it. That means a lot to us. But when you come out and say, this is what you did, you inspired me to create, you inspired. Then you got the constructive criticism of, hey, you're doing great in this part, but if you just tweak that a little bit or listen to somebody trying to help you, even if they don't phrase it correctly, but then you ignore that, I hate your glasses.
Yeah.
Take the positive, ignore the negative.
Yeah.
Always go toward the positive.
That's as long as they're listening.
yeah.
It could be positive or negative.
I would even flip that. As long as you're
taking
happy,
arrows,
who cares?
And I promise I won't keep talking. But one last thing is, with those comments, even with constructive criticism, don't try to chase perfection. Don't chase an audience, because if you, as long, you have to keep it your show and what show you want to make.
Yeah. Don't make their show, make your show.
Because at a certain point, you will knock enough corners off that your thing is no longer recognizable as the thing you wanted to make. Right. So just be careful.
And if somebody says you're the worst podcaster I've ever heard of, well, at least they've heard of you.
Yeah. All right, Bobby, where can they find you?
So the video game show I've been doing for 14 years. I just had episode 674 last night. It is terribly named. It's called the Bobby Blackwolf Show. I did it so Jay Leno can't steal my spot. It's live every Sunday night at 8 o'clock, right before Orange Lounge Radio. Rob's in the back. Longest running video game podcast on the internet. I don't care what Wikipedia says. They started in 2002, but we're at the Voice of Geeks Network, vognetwork.com, or at twitch.tv/vognetwork on Sunday nights.
You can find us. We have a new website at trivialwarfare.com. We are building out podcast game shows. So if you like game shows, it doesn't have to be trivia. We're expanding. We're going to have a game every day of the week. You can find us at trivialwarfare.com or at trivialwarfare on any of your social media.
You can go to McElroy.family, and all of our shows are there. You can also find me on Twitter at Travis McElroy.
Yes, I do the new media show with Todd Cochran, who's sitting in the back row there, and we're doing our show live tonight at 10 p.m. in the number 7 room over here. So we're going to talk about podcasting and the future and the industry, and that's what that show is all about. It's at newmediashow.com.
The second Adventure Zone graphic novel, Murder on the Rockport Limited, is out. So buy multiple copies. That's great gift-giving season. And the second issue of my 3-issue arc on Marvel Team Up with Ms. Marvel and Captain Marvel, I think it's number 5, just came out this week too. So, I mean, if you want to spend more money on that than the graphic novel, I get more money for it.
Wait, hold on.
So.
No. I don't get any of that money.
I know.
Tony.
Are you writing that?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. All my socials on TonyPHenderson.com. I didn't write any comics. I'm sorry. I kind of.
I'll give you one.
Thank you.
Anthony.
Yeah, Adventure Incorporated, adventuringpod.com. We got some panels on Sunday morning and Sunday night, and we're very excited to be here.
Awesome. Give it up for our panelists. Make sure you catch them all through the week.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out.